About a week or so ago, I made a video talking about the anime community and how AI, social media, and capitalism in general is harming the space for fans. That includes casual fans as well as those who participate in fandom culture, whether it's fan art, fan fiction, or even cosplay. These social media platforms allow the space for these artists and creators to be harassed for various reasons. Despite the toxic online culture that is pervasive these days, it can't be understated enough how the presence of anime has influenced a lot of artists, even to the point of where artists go and make their own series and other forms of content. Now, if anime is one pillar that is holding up the overall art community, the other pillar to that is Disney. Though I suppose if you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, you're a little bit of both. Sorry, those are the rules. And it's because of Disney as to why certain art challenges even exist. Mermaid, for instance, was created by one of Disney's lead artists. Tom Bancroft, a person who worked on the animation of Mulan, Lion King, and a ton of other Disney movies, was the same man who created Mermaid. Now, if you really want to feel old in the art community, the first Mermaid was over 12 years ago. That being said, again, it's because of this as to why a lot of artists even started to draw. Challenges like Mermaid made it more accessible for people to come up with their own creations. Bancroft was one of the pioneers in online art content, especially for Instagram, but he also posts YouTube videos as well. If you like the 90s and 2000s 2D Disney movies, he likely had something to do with that. I think he also worked on VeggieTales, which is an interesting fact while I was doing the research on this video. VeggieTales always scared me as a kid, so I didn't watch it. Weird story aside, it can't be stated enough that Disney is a beacon of creativity, and most people who think that associate it with their favorite characters. And as such, you would think that given how much it's supposed to value artists, or so they claim, why would they sign a deal with OpenAI? Why would they use Sora, no, not that one, in order to make AI-generated videos? Why would you backstab animators, many of whom learned from Bancroft, in order to make a quick profit? Why are other places and resources for artists starting to get more cozy with AI features? I'm Ayasuna and I make videos, more specifically art videos, and I really hate talking about slop. I would much rather analyze the art of games and other media that I consume because I find a lot more enjoyment out of doing that. But even with my small audience that I'm truly grateful for, I still feel like it's my responsibility to talk about these topics because it is important for the art space to know what's going on, especially from the places where we get inspiration from, the platforms we post our artwork on, even down to the software we use to make art. It's important to know these things because we spend a lot of time and money on them, and it makes sense to want to at least know what we're up against, as well as who we choose to support. I can't tell you whether or not you should support Disney or Clip Studio Paint or any other topics that I talk about in this video, but to be informed I think is very important, and that's the goal of me making videos like this. Now, there's been a lot going on in the Gen AI sphere of the world, and I had kind of been too busy to make separate videos on each topic. However, in this video, we will be talking about Disney, Nvidia, as well as Clip Studio Paint, because these corporations and brands sort of represent the problem that I've been noticing a lot in a bunch of media, especially for Disney and Nvidia. Clip Studio Paint is a little bit different, and that topic is a little bit more nuanced, but I will get to that in a moment. And considering that these are very online topics, it will probably be the case that I might have to make a follow-up video to this. So if you're into that and you like to me talking about these topics, don't hesitate to like this video as well as subscribe. Hopefully my art analysis videos will be coming back soon after this. I had to take a bit of a detour because a lot has been going on online, and as someone who posts art online, I would be a fool to ignore it. So back to the topic at hand, Disney had made a deal with OpenAI over a year or so ago, though the final deal didn't come out till the beginning of 2026. Under this deal, Sora would have the rights to a lot of Disney IP, whether it's Disney itself, Marvel, Pixar, and Star Wars. Under this agreement, users would be able to prompt videos based on a ton of characters from these IPs. This deal was over $1 billion. Can you imagine how many artists that could have been employed with that money? For instance, that's really only 1% of Disney's total net worth. As of March 2026, it's believed that Disney is worth somewhere between $170 billion to $200 billion. And when I'm talking about dollars in this video, I am talking about USD. And in that sense, that's a lot of money. A lot more than pretty much anyone can actually comprehend. Even $1 billion is still a lot more than people even know what to do with. And I'm sorry if this ruffles feathers, but no one should have that kind of money. That being said, OpenAI has sort of been going through a rough time lately. It's obviously overvalued and bleeding money. Tools or AI like Sora is harmful for artists as well as all forms of content creators. Not just on the ethical standpoint of being able to use an artist's project without their consent, it's quite literally taking people's jobs. Art and content creation are real jobs. Not to mention the ecological disaster of having to run something of that magnitude. There are places in the state that I happen to reside in dealing with water issues, and if things like Sora are allowed to propagate, it'll already lead to more issues regarding water supply and other issues associated with data centers. Whether it's increased energy consumption that leads to higher energy bills, noise and health pollution, since a lot of these centers give off methane and other harmful gases, and the fact that they're usually built in places that have lower income residents. There's a data center like that's literally right down the street from where I live. And if you're also in the US, you are probably also pretty close to your nearest data center as well. Despite the promise of AI being the thing of the future and giving everyone a nice big boom, whatever that means, it doesn't really seem like growth in that aspect has really been all that much. Now, as I said in my last video, I'm not a lawyer and I don't really know everything about licensing. But there's several big profile cases that are in the legal system regarding the whole issue of copyright with AI models. Disney, in this instance, has sent cease and desist letters to other AI models that are caught using their own IPs. They did this for Google's Gemini as well as Character AI, as well as Meta when I go back and look at the actual article. OpenAI is also not out of the woods when it comes to legal trouble. Last year, I made a video talking about how OpenAI was being sued by Studio Ghibli. It seems that compared to the West, Japanese animation studios are taking a much harder stance on AI. Again, a lot of the artists that create some of our favorite series are still alive and are still making art. They don't want their stuff being fed to AI, which is pretty understandable. Their copyright is a lot more straightforward than the US. Now, because of these legal troubles, as well as other horrible business decisions, OpenAI has decided to end operations for Sora. Now, Gen AI not being an obvious moneymaker for a lot of corporations, Disney is still trying to pursue AI for future content, just not with OpenAI. In a statement Disney made to Variety, where I got most of the information from this article, Disney still wants to engage with AI platforms to meet fans where they are while responsibly embracing new technologies that respect IP and the right of creators. Now, I'm gonna call BS on this immediately. There's no way that you can really do both ethically. If you really respected the creators, you probably wouldn't be trying to feed their work into AI. This is a generic corporate response, and I don't really think anyone particularly buys it. Despite what chuds and edgelords say on Twitter, AI as a concept isn't exactly popular in the United States. It turns out trying to shove an AI feature into pretty much everything that you use isn't exactly going to be popular. Not to mention the cost to the economy and overall electrical grid, which in our country is pretty weak. Even for those who do support using AI, they do agree that there does need to be some element of control behind it. But considering the fact that there's our lawmakers in Congress right now that don't really know how to write or read a text message, it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. More people are becoming aware of AI and the costs that it has in society. And given how crazy everything is in 2026, that's the best that you can hope for. But what does it mean when a program that's literally designed specifically for artists is caught using and platforming artists that use AI? This leads me to the Clip Studio situation. Full disclaimer, I've been using Clip Studio Paint for over 2 years at this point. I love the software, I love the brushes, and I love many of the features that are in the 4.0 update. I haven't decided if I wanted to upgrade to the 5.0 version yet, but regardless, Clip Studio Paint is still really good for artists and has many resources that are dedicated for different types of art. And I definitely don't think anyone should be bashed for using Clip Studio Paint. That's not the point that I'm going to get at. For software that has been used by both casuals as well as professional artists, it's probably not the best look to have someone on your platform that literally traces their quote-unquote art using actual AI images. For a little bit of background here, every few months or so, Clip Studio Paint usually hosts an illustration challenge. And in exchange for artists to share their work on social media, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, participants have a chance to win several different types of prizes, whether that's a Clip Studio Paint subscription, gold points, which can be exchanged for Clip Studio Paint resources, as well as actual money. It's a good way to give back to the community as well as spread your word for your product. Compared to other software, Clip Studio Paint actually isn't too predatory when it comes to pricing and subscriptions. Anyways, the rules for the competition are pretty simple. In order to enter the competition, just use the special hashtag that Clip Studio Paint provides and post it on social media. The artwork has to be original artwork. That means you can't use fan art. No tracing, which means you can't really trace from another artist and pass it on as your own. And last and not least, you can't use generative AI. In fact, Clip Studio Paint is one of the only software brands out there that don't have generative AI features or AI assistants. So with that in mind, you might be wondering why Clip Studio Paint chose to platform an artist who quite literally traces from AI. You can look at the cover art for this illustration competition and realize that there's something not quite right about it. Now, I don't really like to be the artist that tries to catch people using AI. In a lot of cases, I don't like witch hunts because it can end up harassing artists who literally have nothing to do with it. And it also encourages the environment to police how a person draws. Each person has their own technique, and there's no right or wrong way to make art in that case. Despite me not agreeing with how this person chose to make their art, I still don't want anyone to harass them because, again, that's not cool. The person who made this is a pretty established artist on Instagram as well as DeviantArt. Tracing in general is a tricky subject in the art community. I think if you're doing it to learn and you don't plan on sharing your artwork to anyone else, I think it's fine in most cases. However, if you're doing a trace and you do decide to post it online, that's not a good idea. Especially for something as big as a competition for one of the largest art software brands. Especially by using generative AI. Using AI to trace or tracing off of someone else's artwork and passing it out as your own is not cool. Don't do that. And it's even more disappointing from someone who's been in the art field for a better part of 10 years. Now, if you go on Clip Studio Paint's website for the competition, you see the speed paint for this artwork. But the whole rendering process, at least what is shown, does look a little sus as well. I don't really like to police an artist's art style or process because everyone has a different process, like I said. But it's weird to render the drawing, then color it, then render it again. It doesn't really seem all that intuitive. Now, instead of Clip Studio Paint realizing that they platformed someone who used AI art to trace, they sort of doubled down on it. They tried to claim that the artist did not use generative AI in the process of making this artwork, but with the weird-looking speed paint, they may not have done everything with AI, but they certainly did trace over it. The artist themselves has admitted to using, or at least tracing over AI for around 3 years at this point. Now, I will say that I pretty much suck at digital art compared to a lot of artists. I've only really been doing it for around 3 years at this point. I still am now trying to figure out a full-blown process for how I go about doing digital art. Unfortunately, in the year 2026, posting a speed paint of doing art doesn't necessarily absolve a person from using AI in their process. But I have reason to think that this isn't the first time that Clip Studio Paint has done something like this. And for the artists, there are DeviantArt messages and Discord messages proving and saying that they did use AI. And this goes back to 2023. Even if you trace over AI and try to pass it as your own, it's still not really your own artwork. And it's so sad to see this because Clip Studio Paint is pretty accessible as a program. It's available both on PC and on mobile, and it's only a fraction of the price of Adobe Photoshop. And it's geared more towards artists, which Photoshop really isn't. When companies aren't exactly being transparent about who they contract to do the work for the company, it's not exactly a good look, and it doesn't really inspire confidence among the user base. Clip Studio's response isn't exactly reassuring either in that regard because they didn't really look at the fact that the person did use AI in the past. I can't say whether or not you should or shouldn't give up Clip Studio Paint because of this, and I can understand why you might want to do so. I got the perpetual license for Clip Studio Paint, so I don't really have to pay any subscription, only if I decide to want to upgrade the program. As it stands, Work My Own has everything that I need to make art, and like I said, I'm still new to digital art in the first place, and there's plenty of features that I don't even use. I don't really see myself wanting to upgrade anytime soon, and if I do get another device, I might seek other options in terms of doing digital art. Vita has never done me dirty. If Procreate actually made a PC launcher or an Android launcher, they would certainly make bank. That being said, I still think Clip Studio Paint is a great deal good for the art community. You're able to purchase art resources in a centralized place and not have to worry about falling for scams. Now, another troubling trend that I've seen in the digital art space regarding AI is people using AI to promote their brush packs. I've seen this more on Etsy and Pinterest and other social media platforms, so for that reason I do think it's better to go through an official vendor like the Clip Studio Resource Store. If anyone has more information regarding the situation, please let me know down in the comments. If there's any follow-up to these situations I talk about in this video, I might make a follow-up, or I might come back in the future and do edits to this video. But yeah, if you like me talking about content like this, even though it's not exactly what I would like to be focusing on, please consider supporting this channel. That being said, AI, consent, and copyright is definitely a huge issue if you made it this far into the video. Unfortunately, there's one more AI Slop story that I kinda wanted to cover before I finish off here, and that involves NVIDIA. More specifically, their DLSS5 AI filter. Now, DLSS isn't exactly new in terms of gaming and computing. I don't exactly have all the time in the world to explain it, and I'm sure there's creators that can do a better job at explaining what it does, but pretty much it's supposed to make the game look better. Unfortunately, DLSS 5 is using generative AI to change the look of certain characters. This is most noticeable in the new Resident Evil game, where everyone is losing their minds over Daddy Leon. Now, you can't really fix perfection like this. DLSS 5 is an optional feature for many newer games. However, it is coming at the cost of actually changing the artistic direction of said games. It's quite literally turning characters into weird off-model versions of themselves. This is yet another AI feature that no one really asks for and no one really wants. I can sort of understand AI upscaling. It is a feature that is being used in a lot of games now. It's not exactly improving the game's performance. It's quite literally adding details that weren't really there in the first place. It's changing the textures for the game. Now, it's also something that's prevalent with short-form content. If you scroll TikTok or YouTube Shorts, you likely know what I'm talking about. It's those videos that are overly saturated with plastic-looking textures. Now, some YouTube accounts are able to turn off this weird feature, but some can't. I was lucky enough to be the ones that can change the setting. Some creators don't even know that this is a setting that can be changed. But it kind of ruins video quality, and it doesn't even really look all that good, unfortunately. This is yet another example of large corporations just pretty much screwing over artists in artistic direction. Resident Evil is a very popular gaming series, and for good reason. The games look good, the characters are interesting, and the world is definitely quite immersive. And did I mention attractive characters? Even my Arrow Ace self can recognize that both Leon and Ada Wong are quite fine. They don't need AI upscaling to look any more quote-unquote attractive. Since there's so much AI slop out there these days, it's starting to feed on itself and it's starting to develop the same face syndrome. Not only that, like I said, there's an environmental cost and an energy cost. Gaming actually did used to be one of the more affordable hobbies that a person could partake in. However, thanks to AI raising the price of computer components such as GPU and RAM, basic starter gaming PCs are starting to become out of reach for a lot of people. So even those that are tech savvy aren't exactly happy that AI is being shoved down our throats in pretty much every space. It's literally making me want to collect physical media and play old games all the time. It's making the exposing place that is the internet even more of a pain to want to interact with, and it's contributing to the destruction of our planet. I still believe that there is a chance for the AI bubble to burst. It's not exactly all that popular, and it won't really gain popularity if it's being forced in literally every facet of our lives. There are physical and mental risks in relying on these tools to quote unquote make our lives better. There are some instances in which AI can actually help people, but generative AI is not one of those things. It's quite literally turning our brains into mush, and it's ruining the creative process for so many different fields. If we don't put a stop to it, or at least try to control it in some way, it will unfortunately destroy us. And I don't even think that's a hyperbole at this point. I don't really like talking like this because it is scary and I definitely don't want to fearmonger, but I don't really see any good coming from being overly reliant on generative AI. But I think that's where I'm going to leave off today's video. Hopefully the next video that I make will actually be back to actually analyzing real art and be a lot more upbeat. My last few videos have been a little bit on the more negative side of things. Considering that I just got done with a Detroit Become Human playthrough, I probably will be talking about this topic again in the somewhat near future. That being said, I hope you all take care and have a good day, night, evening, wherever you are. Stay safe and keep creating. And I'll see y'all when I see y'all. Peace.